Well, welcome, Drew.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great. So we are all very eager to learn about the story of how you made this great, successful company. But before we go there, I really want to start with why. I mean, you are 24 years old, barely out of college, and you decided to go up against the giants. Google was doing its G Drive, Microsoft its SkyDrive, Apple with Mobile Me, and yet you decided to start an online storage company. What were you thinking?
You're right. I mean, there were a bunch of different folks out there doing similar things. I think what frustrated me was none of these things really did what I wanted, and I didn't really want to wait for, something else to come along. And it was really born out of personal frustration. I think startups often, if you're making something valuable, and making something that people want, I think there's a lot of ways that it can succeed, even if there are other folks doing similar things.
Awesome, that's great. So that's a great lesson for everyone. Just because there are giant incumbents in the market space, that should not stop you from pursuing your dreams if you have a great idea, right?
Yeah, I mean, startups, people overestimate a little bit how often startups are killed by competitors. Startups usually die from self-inflicted wounds and making things that people don't want. And actually, Y Combinator, which was one of our first investors, their motto is make something people want. And if you do that, then there's a lot of different ways that you can succeed.
So going by this first investment, so when you started out, I mean, most startups have to make a lot of tough decisions, especially in the early years. So teleport us back to your boardroom, meeting rooms, game rooms, wherever you're making your decisions, right? Tell us about some of the tough decisions you had to make and the impact they have had on your company.
Sure. So I don't know if obviously, I think that the biggest challenge is, I started, when I was 24, right, in my bedroom in my apartment in Inman Square in Cambridge, Mass. And I was about a year out of undergrad. And I think the hard thing is really is not so much any one decision as much as having to make hundreds of little decisions. And, I think a lot of people in the room have had the same experience where, you're starting this for the first time, you have no idea what you're doing, and you're making all these decisions about, who am I going to hire, what office space are we going to get, what should the product do, how much should it cost, and then there's just the mundane things, we moved out from Boston to California, and within a couple weeks, ended up getting connected through Y Combinator to Sequoia Capital, who are our first seed investors. And we go through that whole financing process, and we reach the end of it, and they decided to invest in our company. And we're like, this is great, because this is what you dream of. You move, you have like $1,000 left in your bank account, and suddenly someone's going to write you a check for $1 million to get started. And they're like, this is awesome. We'd love to invest. Please send us the wiring instructions. And we're like, oh my God. The only thing I know about a wire transfer I saw in a James Bond movie. And so we're like, yeah, great, we'll do that. And the only thing we have is our first, we sort of had my first business checking account from Bank of America that we had set up, back in Boston. And if there's one thing you don't want to screw up when you take venture investment, it's figuring out how to get the money into your bank account. So we're like, okay, we should really figure this out. And we had literally our boxes weren't even unpacked since moving into San Francisco. This was in fall of 2007. And my co-founder and I were like, well, we should probably head to Bank of America and see what we should do about this. And so we walk into the branch in North Beach, and there's the tellers on one side, and there's the leather seat people on the other side. And we're like, this is probably a leather seat problem. So we go over there and we sit down, and the lady's nice. She's like, okay, well, how can I help you? And my co-founder and I are a little disheveled, wearing hoodies and flip-flops, and so I sit down and I'm like, okay. So our bank account had $60 in it at the time, and I was like, so is there a limit to how much a bank account can hold? And and she's like, no, why? I'm like, can it hold $1 million? And she kind of looks at me and she's like, yes. And I don't know if she thought it was like drugs or something else, but I stopped asking questions, she stopped asking questions, we figured it out. But it's hundreds of little things like that, where you're just doing it for the first time, and just new things are coming at you. And to this day, we have you have the same kind of challenge where it's just, and that's what I love about it, is that there's never a dull moment.
So your first big challenge was to find out whether your bank account can hold enough money. That's great.
Good problem to have.
Great. So, a lot of startups these days are doing what's now come to known as a pivot, right? Mm-hmm. And it looks like it's almost become a prerequisite to become successful. So have you had your moment of pivot yet, or any surprising discoveries that you have made along the way? I mean, what was your original vision? What is Dropbox, and how it has evolved since you conceived it?
Mm-hmm. We're actually a pretty unusual situation in that the sort of problem that was one of the benefits of sort of having the problem yourself. So Dropbox was born out of my frustration because, it even goes back to MIT, where I studied computer science, and you sit down at any of tens of thousands of computers, and your stuff is just in front of you, and it's just taken care of. And then you graduate, and it's back to the Stone Age, right? I'm emailing myself stuff. I'm carrying on a thumb drive, just all the things we do that we don't even notice to kind of scrape by. And I was working on another company at the time that I had started, and I had to work across a bunch of different computers. Wow. And it was just, I was just so frustrated. The sort of non-PR version of the story is, I'm an engineer. I had a 3 gigabyte VM image I needed to work across different computers. Moving that, being able to access a file that big from all these different computers, there were all these tools that were supposed to do this, but none of them really worked. And I could never really trust any of them because half the time, you couldn't tell what they're doing, or it didn't really solve the problem. And so it started out as a tool I was just building for myself. And so it was pretty clear to me sort of what the problem was, and sort of some of the simplicity of Dropbox. I mean, now that's like something specific, that's a virtue we have in our design process, but it's actually kind of by accident in that we sort of were making the simplest thing that could possibly work because we didn't have time to build something complicated. But it's interesting, a lot of startups do pivot. You hear about PayPal starting out in like beaming payments from PDA to PDA and then moving into web payments sort of by accident, or other pretty notable examples. But we actually, it's been surprising. The problem we set out to solve the product we built and the sort of business we were going after is actually pretty similar to what we hoped would exist, and we never had to make really huge changes, except for, there are some hard questions like, okay, to what extent do we go after individuals versus businesses, number of market questions like that. And I think you're starting out, you're just like, okay, I just need to make something that works. And you're just building a prototype or just scraping something together, and then as you get an audience, then sort of the vision for what you want to do expands, and as you have real people using the product, and it's reaching people from all these different walks of life, and you have this audience and this platform, there's just so much more you can do. Wow. And I can talk more about that.
That's great. So what you're saying is it was an idea that was born out of personal frustration, and you just kept it simple.
Right.
Right. And the idea has continued to evolve the way you had originally conceived it, and you're just continuing on that path, which is great. But as you know, we had Steve Case as a keynote speaker yesterday, and at the peak, AOL had about 35 million odd users, and we all know how Steve did it. I think they made sure that every second piece of mail that was going out by USPS was an AOL CD, right? So I haven't seen any CDs from you in the mail yet. How did you reach 25 million users?
So for us, it really started out, and our thinking is pretty simple around this. If you make a product that people really love to use, then that gives you a pretty big tailwind for everything else you would do to spread it. And that's not the only thing you need to do. I mean, we also put a big percentage of our engineering resources into thinking about clever ways to thinking about customer acquisition. So the way we get a lot of our users, and the way a lot of the other sort of fast-growing consumer internet companies have the reach this kind of scale and faster than any company's ever have in like the history of the world, is really through one, word of mouth. And so if I tell you, we made this referral program where if I tell you about Dropbox, you get some free space and I get some free space, and every month millions of people do that. And then also sort of viral elements of the product where just by in the course of you using it, you bring people into the fold. So PayPal's an example of that, where actually that's what the referral program was modeled after. Is like back when they got started, there was this pretty famous thing where if you get someone to sign up for PayPal, you get $5, or maybe it is either you get $5 or the recipient gets $5. But they had this sort of cash incentive to do this, and I think that was a big part of how they sort of got their first traction. Not all of it has worked. I mean, a lot of our early experiments, because again, going back to sort of you're doing this for the first time, you sort of do you're going to try things that are conventional. We're like, okay, we're going to launch the company. All these sort of bootstrappy things we did to get the marketing started are really unprofessional, even though they were working really well. And we're like, we need to go do what every startup does, right? Hire a PR firm, find a head of marketing, and buy search ads and AdWords and do SEO and things like that. And we, a lot of this.
Has the word of mouth referral been the biggest one though?
Well, so we didn't. We had just launched the company, and we had done a couple of things early on to promote it. And I can talk more about those if you want. But early on, we basically tried a bunch of things, and it's not always clear which ones are going to work. And then it was very clear after a while that the referral program and just making our users really happy got them to spread the word. And it's not just that you can kind of bolt on a referral program and your growth will just magically skyrocket. In our case, I think we're fortunate in that for a lot of people, Dropbox falls into this category of thing where, first of all, like nobody's getting up in the morning wishing they didn't have to carry around a thumb drive or email themselves stuff, right? That's just how computers work. But whether they realize it or not, it's a big problem for people to kind of keep track of all these things. And so when a product comes along and it solves a problem you didn't even know you had, and it actually works, that doesn't happen unlike like the Blu-ray player you buy at Fry's and it has like a 90-button remote control and you can't figure out how to use it. So something about Dropbox hits that threshold where people like it, and then they like it so much, sort of so unexpectedly that they tell their friends about it. So that's how I think about it.
Got it. So what you're saying is a problem that everyone has that you're solving it in a very simple and easy way. Mm-hmm. And so people want to tell their friends about it, as well as you have a referral program that then accelerated that word of mouth program.
And there's also things in the product like shared folders where the 5 of us need to recruit, the 2 of us need to work on something, and so you become a Dropbox user just as a course of my using the product.
So another element is as more people join the service, it becomes valuable for them together as well. So it's not just about I'm referring my friends. When my friends are on it, it is adding value to me as well.
That's right.
And my friends. So that's another viral component that you have.
Yeah, it's more valuable to me it provides incentives to me to like recruit all my friends to use it. And a lot of the fastest growing services really had this element of it. And it's something, that you should think about, or at least spend a big portion of your time thinking about, not just building a great product, but building in a very fundamental way mechanisms into the product that help it spread itself.
Got it. Now, as they say, luck favors the brave. I mean, in my book, every entrepreneur is a brave soul, but not everyone gets lucky, right? Has luck been a part of your growth as well, or has it just been pure hard work?
I think luck is part of any company that becomes successful. I think luck is a huge part of it. We were fortunate in that the story could have been pretty different for us in a number of ways. We were fortunate that we were able to find the people, a lot of the great early team that we found. People. One thing people might not realize is that even the very best companies were like severely screwed up in their early days in a lot of ways. And so making mistakes that are painful and not fatal is, there's an element of luck there in making the right mistakes.
Tell us a little bit about those mistakes.
I mean, one of the examples is really some of those experiments that failed, or some of those experiments that failed around customer acquisition, right? They spent all the things that we were sort of deliberately doing to try to acquire customers were like useless, and all the things we were sort of accidentally doing just because they were ideas that occurred to us were doing really well. So sometimes these things happen. And then there's a category of some mistakes that every company goes through.
But I think there's an important point that you just made there. You're saying that some of the things that you're planning weren't really working as well, and some of the things that you didn't expect worked well.
Sure.
But then you had the nimbleness to spot those trends and make sure that you switched your plan and focused on the things that were working.
Yeah.
Rather than, so that's a very important point, I think.
Yeah, and what works for Dropbox is going to be different from what works for all of your companies. I think there's all kinds. You can benefit from this sort of a playbook. So for customer acquisition, for example, right? Social gaming has been sort of an amazing petri dish for all these different ways that you drive engagement, drive customer acquisition, get these services to grow really quickly. But while there are themes of things that work, what works for any two companies is going to be different. And so that context is really important, and just sort of like blindly, or just the fact that there are things out there that have worked for other people does not kind of absolve you from the need to kind of just think from fundamentals, like, okay, well, how is the individual user of my product actually, like, what are their interactions with it day to day? Like, how do they, what do they do day to day with the product that then would spread it around to their friends? And we did some other interesting things in the really early days. Actually, I mean, we've started out promoting Dropbox actually through making these demo videos. And actually, my Y Combinator application, at the same time, I posted a video on Hacker News, which is kind of like Dig for startup news, if you haven't seen it before. And actually, seeing the response from that, it was fairly easy for me to put that together compared to like making a polished product and putting it in a lot of people's hands. But the sort of response from that video, that just all the people commenting on it and getting excited about it was one of the big things that encouraged me to sort of to perceive this as something worthwhile, and to encourage me to like quit my job and move out to California and do this, instead of all the other things that were.
So when you started, obviously, I'm assuming that you didn't expect that you're going to get this kind of growth, 25 million users in just a few years. So what was that inflection point where you realized that, wow, I mean, this thing is going to be big?
Sure.
And how did that come about?
So I think there's always like, there's multiple ones along the way. I think the big ones were the two videos we put together. So literally in my bedroom in Cambridge. So it's kind of funny. I learned how to. So I play guitar and learned how to do some sort of basic recording, and I made video, like just recruiting videos and different things for my fraternity in college. And it turns out that and had to use Photoshop to like make T-shirts and things like that. And then I sort of used those skills in my first company and had to design the website because we weren't going to pay anybody to do it. So the point is, all these sort of random skills you learn along the way can sometimes come in handy for later. And what I did was, in my bedroom in my apartment in Cambridge, just put together like a 3-minute demo video of just a walkthrough of the product. Because one problem is, one sort of theme or one sort of common failure mode for a lot of the other things that had been created was they weren't reliable. And actually I spent a big piece of my 20s like discovering that sort of syncing things reliably without like destroying your baby pictures or Excel spreadsheets, which if you went into a lot of the forums of the competing products, you'd have people with these problems. So it's actually it's a hard problem, and it takes a while to really bulletproof it. And so releasing something that was half-baked, you want to launch as early as possible, but in our case, it's kind of mission critical. And so, you don't want to like launch fast and iterate on like a pacemaker, right? So in our case, we could still get the idea across with just putting out a simple video, and it was actually a very low effort way of sort of proving the concept. And whatever you do, you want to confirm as early as possible that you're working on something worthwhile. Because the worst case is when you spend years of your life on something, just sort of building it in a room, and then when it encounters reality, it turns out to be not something people want. So the demo video in the beginning was really important because it was like, okay, this is something that has potential. Then the second one that we did, we launched our private beta, and we put out a similar video on Dig. And what you want to do when you're launching your company is sort of for every product or for every service, there's usually some class of early adopters. So if you have if you have a site about cars, there's going to be internet forums of people that do nothing but talk about cars all day, right? And for anything, right? And so you want to find those communities of people and participate in them, and they're often a great kind of first target for finding your first group of passionate users. And so for us, the kinds of people that use Dropbox were also the kinds of people that looked at sites like Dig and Reddit were kind of classic early adopters who seek out kind of technology for its own sake and like enjoy trying out new things. And I had grown, again, the sort of skills coming out of strange places. I mean, I spent a bunch of time in high school like reading Slashdot and sites like that. So I kind of knew how these communities work. And so what we did was we made a 3-minute demo, but we put in all these Easter eggs that would be familiar to the Dig and Reddit community. So like references to internet memes, like XKCD, and there's a song, Chocolate Rain by Tay Zonde, who was like a YouTube star in the early days. References to movies, all these different things. And they were very kind of under the radar. So I was walking through the product in a very kind of deadpan way, but like if you sort of watch the video, like something's gonna catch your eye if you're like a Dig reader and you're like, wait a minute, he just made reference to like Office Space or something that I recognize. And so the point being, that was like a big catalyst. So anyone who saw the video of it from Dig, even if they were like not that excited about the product, they noticed that clearly the people making this like were part of that community, or at least could speak to them in an authentic way, and they upvoted it, and it was pretty crazy. I mean, we had a beta waiting list of 5,000 people, and literally a day later, it jumped up to 75,000.
Wow.
And so we had been kind of like worrying about this kind of critical mass problem for a long time, because like that's something that every startup deals with, and like to have that solved in one day, it was like pretty ridiculous. And it was just driving hundreds of thousands of people to the site. The link got like 12,000 digs, and it was just a huge. That was really the first moment where we're like, wow, there's like a lot of pent up demand for what we're doing, and this is actually something that a lot of people can use.
So it's about fulfilling the demand or the need, but it was also some creative ways that you got a lot of users attracted to the service.
Yep.
Right? And that initial momentum, then you were able to build upon that. While you're talking about it, you also talked about one other thing that caught my attention, which was that you continue to launch quickly and iterate a lot on the service. So expand a little bit more about that in terms of what has been your strategy in terms of launching the product, and are you launching a lot of features very quickly, and how are you deciding your whole product cycle?
So we definitely aspire to launch quickly and iterate quickly. Some parts of the product, it's easier to do that than others. So on the website and things like that, we can actually do that fairly well. But one thing that is maybe distinctive about how we plan these things is we do fewer things, but we try to do them really well. Okay. So actually we actually don't launch, we haven't launched dozens of new features and done tons of iterations on these things, and it actually takes longer than sometimes we would like to get some of these things out the door. But one of the invariants that we like to keep is we only want to launch things that are simple and that people can easily use, and things that actually work. I think one trap you kind of fall into, and something that eventually suffocates and kills consumer internet companies, is they just keep adding stuff, right? Some like AOL Instant Messenger in the early days, it started out really simple and people loved it because they're like, wow, I can download this thing and I can figure it out, and then now 5 minutes later I'm talking to my friends. And then over time the team gets bigger and you have all these product managers, and they're like, all right, well, product managers aren't paid to take stuff away, so wouldn't it be great if we had stock quotes in our Instant Messenger client, and videos and games and video chat, and or just the list. Eventually the thing gets so weighted down, and you look at the front page and you get to the point where okay, you're downloading AIM to talk to your friends, and then you actually open it up and it's this NASCAR or Las Vegas, there's all this stuff coming at you, and you figure out how to do the basic thing you came to try to do. And so I think there have been counterexamples of that recently with companies like Apple and Facebook, who are really willing to cut stuff out, and Facebook in particular willing to sort of start their platform, for example, and things like newsfeed, throw away large swaths of functionality that they spent a lot of time developing because they sort of changed their mind after they learned from their users about what they really wanted, and they were kind of opinionated.
So have you thrown away any functionality yourself?
I don't. There's stuff that we're working on that is going to supersede existing functionality.
So tell us a little bit more about then. What's your roadmap? Where do you go from here?
Yeah. So our vision is really to simplify millions of people's lives,
Yep.
and that's at the heart of it. When we started, things were a lot simpler. Even 4 years ago, right? There was no iPhone, no tablets. People mostly just had like a single computer, like a laptop, maybe some photos to back up, but they weren't like taking pictures with their phone and editing things on their iPads and putting things on Facebook and Twitter, to nearly the same extent they are today. And tomorrow that's going to be, your camera and your TV and your car. And there's just going to be all these billions of things that are connected. And it's really hard for people to keep track of this stuff. There's things like you ought to be able to do. Like, it's great that your phone can take like, HD video, but like how many people have actually like seen that then in their living room? And there are all these things that sort of, we would just say this to investors. We're like, look, like Tom Cruise in Minority Report is not like logging into Gmail to pick up the attachment he sent himself that morning, right? And he's not carrying around a thumb drive, and he's just over here, and everything just kind of works. And so that's really, to some extent what we're trying to build is like to build it. There's going to be all these devices and apps and services out there, which today none of them talk to each other. And we think there's a huge opportunity to kind of build the fabric that ties all these things together.
That's great. So in terms of your business model, I know that you have a freemium service and then you have some paid plans. So give us a sense of how well that's working, and are you seeing a lot of people converting from the freemium model to the paid model, and how did you come about creating the pricing model that you did?
Yeah. So I think we looked at some of the other freemium services out there. I think we also just sort of, that was one of the things that was important to me when picking an idea. It was something that people are willing, make something that people are willing to pay for, which was kind of a quaint idea in the height of
exactly.
Web 2.0 when we started. And we've done different iterations on this kind of thing, and different split tests and A/B tests on pricing and whatnot. But we started a business where when you start a freemium business, you expect that most of the users are going to be free users, and that for each paid user that you bring on, that they can subsidize a large number of free users. And fortunately, that kind of worked from day one. And while we don't break out the specifics on the numbers, that the paid side of things has obviously been growing alongside all the rest of the growth. And so the way we think about that is pretty simple too, just to make something that people that's worth paying for.
So usually, do you see people start out with the free model and then convert over to the paid, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the interesting things about the free model is we're totally fine if you use the free product forever. The business model is sort of designed again, I expect that most people are going to be free users, but then if you learn about it, you might not pay for it, but you might refer someone who does.
Okay.
And as long as kind of the lines cross on conversion and everything else, then that's a great situation. And this is something where
Drew's mic is not working, right? No, it just got cut off. Can you just get a handheld mic? I think it's, or is it back? Can you check? No, I think something got disconnected, I guess.
Thanks. Correct. All right, there we go. Sorry. So as long as lines cross on the economics, then fortunately all this scaled. And also we have a lot of businesses using Dropbox. So half of our paying users actually say that they're using Dropbox primarily for business, and that's been a really big part of what we do too.
Got it. Wonderful. So if I were to ask you, let's say, the lessons learned over the last few years, what are some of the do's and don'ts that you can share with the audience?
So it's sort of like it's a little bit of a hard question to answer, because it's sort of like, well, if you're playing guitar, what are the three things you should do? And there's 100 things you should do, but or some of those things can sound a little bit trite. But I can at least share the pieces of advice that everybody would always give me that kept hammering into our heads. And one of them was obviously, it all starts with hiring really good people. And that sounds kind of obvious, but then and maybe it's only a lesson you learn after bringing on some really awesome people and then others that don't work out, and you sort of learn a painful lesson. But obviously, especially in a market that's really competitive, having the best possible people and hiring people that are better than you is essential.
That actually always works. My boss always did that. They always hired people who were smarter than them.
Two is, work on something you really love, and again, that's something you're going to hear a lot. And maybe again, that's something you learn by not doing it properly. Like one of the challenges of my first startup was, I think every sort of entrepreneur goes through this kind of ugly adolescence where they're more excited about sort of self-identifying as an entrepreneur and starting a company, even if they're more excited about that and just by sort of looking in the mirror and being like, yeah, I started a company, more than like what they're actually working on day to day. And being like proud of what you're building and all these things. So the challenge for me with my first company, which was doing online SAT prep, was actually a great experience, and the company it did okay, but it wasn't going to really kind of reach escape velocity. But I think one of the bigger challenges I had with that is after a while, you should really think through kind of what's your best case scenario, or like if all your dreams come true, is the end point something you're really excited about? And because in my case, like I love the SAT as much as any hormonally balanced person can. But at the end of the day, like sort of if the best case scenario is I'm like kind of king of SAT prep, which is fine. I don't want to denigrate that, and actually it's something it's a service that's valuable to people and something that really stresses people out. But for me, I'm a technologist at heart. I want something that's really something where the technology is really kind of a core part of the sustainable advantage, and there's the part of the company that that's the part that I get really excited about, and right. Using engineering, like great engineering under the hood to do something useful for people, and so it turns out that so after sort of spending years on this company. And it really wasn't kind of going to go where I wanted it to go. I talked to other entrepreneurs who had sort of been in similar situations where, often you'll run into this situation where you've put all this sort of blood and sweat into building this company, and it's sort of going, but it's not like taking off, and sort of making the call. It's a really hard thing, making the call to let that go and to work on something else. And people ask, how do you know when to do that, or how do you know when not to? And it's kind of like a relationship, right? So there's no like 9 rules you need to ask if you should like break up with your girlfriend. But the emotion is actually not too different. And so working on something you love, but again, when you see it, like when with Dropbox, it's like we love what we're building. We think it's really important. We think that it's a lot of fun to work with awesome people and be working on really interesting things, and to more and more have this platform on which we can solve, a lot of problems that affect tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of people. And so that part of it is like the most fulfilling is getting the random emails from makeup artists who use Dropbox to who couldn't have made like their indie film without it. It's people from all over the place.
So you talked about a few things that you should be doing, which is hire people smarter than you, great team. Be passionate about what you do. So if you can see yourself in the best case scenario, what would you like yourself to be?
Sure.
Any don'ts that you want to share? Things that you would say you should not be focusing on when you're doing a startup.
I think don't try to do too many things at once. I'm a pretty optimistic and enthusiastic guy, and fortunately my co-founder is a little bit more realistic or pessimistic. Because we've had sort of these perennial debates of like, okay, well, your Dropbox, you can only watch one folder, and a lot of people want to be able to watch more than one folder, or should we go into? There's a lot of money in the enterprise kind of side of the house, and how quickly should we go after that, and or how many things should we try to build this quarter? And I think really I believe we've benefited from trying to do fewer things really, really well than trying to win on sort of, or be too focused on competitors and sort of lists of features and things like that, because we're always going to lose those comparisons. But everything we do actually works, and so really I think one of the challenges of being an entrepreneur or running a company is there's so many different, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things you can do. And there's like thousands of potential partners out there. There's all these people reaching out to you with different ideas. And emotionally it hurts to say no to all these things because that in there are things that would be really successful, or even saying no to things are going to be pretty good ideas.
Right.
But you say no so that you can focus on the one or two things that you think are really going to move the needle. So don't try to do too many things at once.
So one final question I would like to ask is figure out, in terms of your future plans, a lot of companies, they start out as end-user focusing companies, and then they also end up becoming a platform so that other developers can tap into it. And especially I think for this audience, it'll be interesting to know, are you planning to do that as well? Is there a way that we can build on top of what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So today, we already have hundreds of mobile apps that sort of have Dropbox baked into them.
Right.
So where instead of, if it's a to-do list app or, a photo app, instead of opening and saving things to the physical device, it's going to, open and save to and from your Dropbox. And that's just the beginning. Obviously, most of the things that use Dropbox in some way are going to be things that we don't make. So to have Dropbox work with your phone and your tablet and your TV and all these things, we're doing a lot of work to make that kind of thing possible. And then we've also made it possible for any developer to just go to developers.dropbox.com and just get started and build stuff that works with Dropbox. And we've sort of artificially constrained that to mobile apps for now, for a couple of reasons. But over the next year or so, we're going to be doing a ton more there, and that's really important, and it's really exciting to because we think we do a really great job of taking care of all those details, and really excited to have Dropbox make all these other things that other folks are making better.
That's wonderful. So if I were to summarize some of the conversations, you started out saying it doesn't matter how many giant incumbents are out there. If you have an idea, follow that with passion, and don't worry about the competition out there. Most startups die because of self-infused wounds, right? Self-inflicted wounds. So I think that's a great lesson. So if you are looking to start a company, don't be scared of who else is out there, right? Keep it simple. Create a product that people would want to refer to their friends, potentially have a referral program. Create something that adds value as my friends join that system, so that creates a virality, right? In terms of marketing, you mentioned about the freemium model, so that gives people a way to start using your services without paying, and then as they get used to it, then they see the value, and then they go on to become paid customers, right? So those are some of the very great lessons for us, and I would like to thank Drew for being with us here today. Let's give him a big hand.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
Wonderful. We have time for 2 audience questions. So maybe we can pass the mic into the audience and just have pick 2 winners for asking 2 questions. Anyone? Dan, can you give a mic to the audience?
All right. Should I just pick someone?
Sure.
All right, go.
Pick one. Give them the mic.
How do we resist the pressure of being acquired? So I think, we're really excited about building something independent, and we've always been kind of a heads down kind of company, and we have the fortune of having a big audience and a working business model, so we have the ability to control our destiny. And one thing I underestimated at the beginning was, I knew the sort of very early part of the process would be fun, but I thought it would just get like harder and scarier and worse over time. And there's definitely a learning curve, but it actually is a lot of fun to continue to run the company and have an opportunity to build something more and more important. And you mentioned that we have always had a number of large competitors in the space, and we've been fortunate just that things have played out the way they have, and the story could have been different in a number of ways. But now that we're in this position, there's a lot of really exciting things that we still want to build.
All right.
Sure, I'll talk to you afterwards.
Yeah, we'll do it later. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's do
one more question.
What was your experience with Y Combinator, and how much did it contribute to your success?
So, what was my expectation about Y Combinator?
Experience.
Sorry. Y Combinator was great, and I think Y Combinator plays a really important role where there's really nothing else out there that in particular. You have all these talented people out there but they might not have like money or experience or connections, and we were coming from Boston, so we weren't really part of the Valley or anything. But Y Combinator does a great job of finding those people or giving them an open application and then kind of getting you plugged into the ecosystem here. And TiE is another great thing that does that. And so, but for And so it was a wonderful experience. We learned from a lot of different entrepreneurs and investors, and they sort of do a good job of it's a boot camp for startup founders, and I had a great experience.
Great, I think that's it.
Do you want to give me?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so if anybody else wants to give business cards, they can give them to Dan, and he can collect and give them to Drew. All right? Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
And